Hello, welcome to Stories for Wonderful Children. I'm Dan Wendelin, your host and storyteller. For many years, I improvised a new bedtime story for my children every night, and in 2020, during the pandemic, I told them a long story about Myra and the online school for adventuring. We're about halfway through that story at this point, so if you are just joining us for the first time, I recommend that you go back and start at the very beginning. And I hope you're enjoying it as much as I enjoyed telling it. Willow glided down to land at the outskirts of the online school's campus, and Myra slid from her back. Willow reverted to her human form and just lay flat on the ground, her eyes closed. "You made it." "We made it," said Myra. Said Willow. Myra said, "And we did it just in time," pointing to the sun just sinking below the horizon. Said Willow. "So," said Myra, "can I help you back to your room?" Myra bent over and tried to pick Willow up. "You've got to help me a little bit," she said. Said Willow, sort of getting into a sitting position. And then Myra helped her to her feet and then bent and picked her up in a fireman's carry. Said Willow, who apparently did not like hanging head down. But Myra knew where the grower's dorm was, and only got a few strange looks carrying Willow across campus, and managed to get Willow to rouse enough to give her the right room number, which thankfully was on the first floor, because Myra was strong, but was not interested in carrying Willow upstairs. She felt a little guilty about feeling that way, given that Willow had just carried her across half the forest and back on her back, but thought Myra, she had wings, so she got to Willow's room and went inside, deposited Willow on her bed, checked to make sure she was still breathing, and then covered her up and left, headed back to her own room. When she got there, Tweety was sitting at Tweety's desk, filing Tweety's fingers with a metal file.
What would happen if Tweety didn't file his fingers?
Tweety's fingers continue to grow a little bit all the time, just like your fingernails.
So, like, he could just have long fingers?
I imagine that they get brittle after a while.
How many joints would that have, though?
Yeah, they get brittle after a little while and crumble off, which is all messy.
He's rock.
I know.
There are no joints, baby.
Then how does he move? Exactly.
Where was I? Anyway, Myra walked in. Tweety looked up from filing Tweety's fingers and said, "How'd it go?" Myra shut the door behind her and slumped into her chair. "It was wild," she said. And then she recounted the whole story of being grounded by being on the school's no-fly list and the expedition almost ending before it began, and then discovering that Willow did not mean a small bird when she said she could turn into a bird, and Willow carrying them across the forest, and told Tweety about the Temple of the Fates, and how she had learned the Fates' names were destiny, life, and thought, and that their cord that they used to weave the fates and read the fates of all things that lived was called the Lifeline. And she told Tweety about the stained glass windows, and then she said, "I found the hidden alcove." And she told Tweety about going down into it and reached into her pocket and held out the round, smooth, sort of pale green stone that she had found in the alcove. It still glowed just faintly, and Myra couldn't shake the feeling that it still had something to say. "I found this," she said, and she told Tweety about the message from the Fates saying that they had seen her in their future, and that they had told Myra that they were on the right track. And she said, They told me that we need to find them and free them and find their lifeline and free it as well. And she said, but they didn't tell me anything about where to find them or how to free them. So that's very... She paused. She could hear footsteps out in the hall, and it sounded like a lot of footsteps. And it sounded like they were coming towards their room. She looked around. She said, do you hear that? Tweety nodded. Myra looked down at the stone in her hand and its faint glow, and she had a sick feeling in the pit of her stomach. She, thinking quickly, said, here, and gave Tweety the stone. Hide it, she said, and turned towards the door, just as a whoom, 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 whoom sounded on the door of someone banging on it. Campus security, open up! Coming, said Myra, glancing desperately at Tweety, who was still staring at the rock. Myra headed towards the door. Whoomp, 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 and then Myra pulled the door open. There were several very large campus security officers there. Myra did not recall ever having seen them before on campus. Hello, she said. May I help you? We're here to search your room, said the main campus officer. We have a tip about contraband magic here in your room. We don't have anything other than what's allowed in the sneaker. We'll be the judge of that. Step aside, please. Do you have, like, a warrant or something? You're in campus housing, ma'am. We don't need a warrant. Now please step aside or we will move you aside. All right, said Myra. Okay. She took a deep breath, stepped aside, turning as she did, and glancing at Tweety. Tweety was filing Tweety's fingers again, and looking like Tweety had not even noticed the people pounding on the door. The campus security crowded into the room and began to search. Not destructively, but searching. Could you tell me what you're looking for? Maybe I could... We'll be fine, thank you. And then a fourth campus security officer showed up, this one leading a stalker llama, which began sniffing around the room. It sniffed around all sides of the room, sort of taking a wide berth around Tweety, and then the campus officers tried to pull it over to Tweety, but it refused to get any closer. Aw, said Tweety, come here. I'm friendly, and gave her biggest, toothiest, rocky smile. The stalker llama backed up several paces. The campus security finished looking around, and then conferred quietly with one another. One of the campus security officers stepped over to Tweety. If you don't mind, would you mind standing up for just a moment? We just need to check your chair. I'm very busy filing my fingers at the moment, said Tweety. If I interrupt, I get the grain all wrong and I can't go back to it. I'm afraid I'm going to have to insist, said the campus security officer. Really? Said Tweety. So just entirely out of curiosity, officer, given that I weigh, on the conservative estimate, and you know, a Tweety never tells, but well in excess of 1,000 pounds, I'm not really sure I see even the four of you moving me if I don't wish to move. Also, said Tweety, you may have the right to search this room because it's the school's room, but I am not the school's, and you do not have the right to lay hands on me. I've read the student handbook. And Tweety looked steadily at the campus security officer, who visibly swallowed at the prospect of lifting Tweety's considerable rocky bulk. The campus security officer looked over at the one leading the stalker llama. He said, come on, get that llama over here to sniff her. Make sure she's not sitting on it. And so the four officers finally ended up picking up the llama and dragging it over, where it very unhappily and tentatively sniffed at Tweety and sniffed at Tweety's chair and then backed up as quickly as it could. Myra didn't know what signal the officers were waiting for from the llama, but whatever it was, they didn't get it. They looked at each other, and then the head officer said, "Well, the tipster must have been incorrect. We apologize for disturbing you." "All right," said Myra. "Have a nice evening." She waited until she had heard them clumping down the hall, and then she turned to Tweety. "Were you sitting on it?" she said.
Nah, he ate it.
"No," said Tweety. "I swallowed it." "Oh," said Myra. "Oh, dear." And that is the end of the story for tonight.
Saw
I'm gonna
that
have to
coming.
wait 4 months to see it again.
Thanks for listening to Stories for Wonderful Children. I created today's show, but questions and running commentary were supplied by my children. The theme music was created by Brandon Thompson, and our wonderful logo was designed by Silas Swindlin. If you know someone who might enjoy the show, please tell them about it. Do you want more stories? You can now subscribe to the show and help pick a new story for me to tell every month. The show's website is storiesforwonderfulchildren.com. Until next time, I'm Dan Wendelin, reminding you to tell someone you love a story.